Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Coach Robb Podcast Network. This is the Vet Show, episode number 21. I've got a special guest. He's been with us before, Mr. James Jetmar, and we have a new co-host. I don't even know if I should call him Hoppo or do I call him the man, the myth, and the legend, Andrew Hopson. How you doing, guys?
I'm doing awesome. How about you today, Rob?
We're doing good. Thanks for taking over the co-host helm here. And
No problem.
James, how you holding up, buddy? Are you at home or are you sitting on the other
Doing
side of the world somewhere?
doing good. No, I'm at home in the guest bedroom. Just went on a
Okay,
mountain bike ride with Garrett, and now I'm chilling for the rest of the day.
fantastic. Well, as you guys know, at the beginning of every one of these vet shows, we take our episode number. We're on number 21 today, and with this number game, we always choose a. When you hear the number 21, James, who's the first rider that comes to mind?
Male, I mean, this is pretty easy one, but I mean, I really do like Anderson. I mean, he
Okay.
just always, I don't know, that number 21 with him. And I think it's honestly, I think it's because these guys get these career numbers now. And I think that's the reason why. But yeah, Jason Anderson pops into my mind. It's the first person I've thought about.
Fair enough. How about yourself, Hoppo?
I'm going to go with Sebastian Tortelli.
Yeah.
The first year he was over here, rode for Honda and led the outdoor championship up until Unadilla when he broke his wrist, and
Mm-hmm.
happened to work with him a little bit at American Honda after that, as I went there and later in the 2000s. Yeah, 21. I mean, there is other, I think Ronnie Tishner might have been 21. I mean, but for some reason, Sebastian is that guy for me.
Well, just to show that we
That's
don't. Go ahead, James. Excuse me.
I was going to say that's funny because I think I was on the 13th show and I picked Sebastian Tortelli for when he ran number 13. So that's pretty funny.
Awesome.
Well, it's crazy because the person I had written down was Sebastian Tortelli. Whenever like if we were just having a beer and you said, "Hey, who's number 21?" Tortelli always
Yeah.
comes to mind. And I think right behind that, I would give either Renard or Stefan Ricotta. I think those two guys as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me, the reason why Sebastian pops out is just, and obviously, Hoppo, you were part of the program, but I just remember the front number plate was like 16 feet by 16 feet big, right? And he ran those big black numbers. I just remember the huge 2-1, and it literally looked like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought, if you go back and we'll put some pictures here on B-roll, it was like he had a pit board, strapped to his fork legs. I was like, that's the biggest damn front
Well,
number plate
yeah,
I've ever seen.
that was the old HRC work style front number plate, and I happen to have one of those on my 500. And
Those are
that was the
cool.
reason why, right? And it's like that was just an awesome plate, and that you're right, the big 21, it just stood out. So
I don't understand this. You look at Tomac. Tomac has taken that number 3, and he makes sure that it fills the entire back of the jersey. And I think that's just brilliant,
Hmm.
right? If you've got a
Yes.
single digit, make that thing so doggone
yeah,
big. I mean, you see the 3 more than you see the word Tomac, but you don't need to know Tomac. You just know that number 3.
Yeah.
I've always wondered, like you said, Hoppo,
that's it.
that big old number plate gives you plenty of real estate. Um, this is completely off subject here, but what do you guys think about the MXGP Hondas with they kind of have that rhino skin?
Yeah.
Love the guy who came up with the rhino skin here in the States, where essentially you're taking the side of the bike and making it a billboard. What do you think about Vial and Hurling's Hondas? You like that look?
Yeah, I do. I think it's good. I,
I do
I, I
too.
I mean, I think that as much as sometimes it's back to the future at some point, but I think that, um, yeah, I like it. I like that it's got to change. It's got to
You
evolve in
know what?
some sort
I
of way.
apologize. It's Slater Skins, not Rhino
Slater
Skins.
skins.
My
Yep.
Okay.
apologies, Slater Skins.
Yep.
Great guy, great company. What about you, James? You like the looks of those Hondas with the side?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I like a little bit more of a, I don't necessarily like the font that he has, that they have, the Honda has. I like it a little bit more bold and corporate, but I do like those skins. That's pretty cool looking. And it's
Yeah.
opens up all kinds of, I've never ridden with them. Andrew, have you ever tried them? I wonder if
No, never
it's
have.
better to grab onto or anything. So that would be interesting
Well,
to try.
and talking with Slater Skins, my big thing was, does that keep in more heat? And then what kind of a nightmare is it for the mechanic? And he's got it so dialed where it's like essentially 3. Don't hold me to the exact number, but it's a very low number of bolts to get that thing right off. It's probably even more of a quick release system, but he says it doesn't overheat the engines and it's very easy to get them on and get them off, but the real estate value is next level. So I think it's really, really cool.
He's definitely pursued with that concept, right? For 20 odd years. So kudos to him.
I can tell you, because I've actually spoken to him, if we put a team together, we will definitely have him on our bikes. It's a no-brainer. And you're not trying to get into brandalism. It's exact opposite. Just give some level of legitimacy. I mean, when you see Progressive is this big on Lawrence's bike, and they put, I heard of upwards of $300 million into motocross last year. That was their advertising budget just in motocross last year. So that's why you're seeing them on GNCC. You see them on, obviously, Roxon, right? That's the big one that they were able to get Roxon with Progressive. But now they've got the Outdoor Nationals. They've got GNCC. They have Loretta Lynn's. They've got Trackside. But they're on Suzuki. They're on Honda. They're on Star Yamaha. I might even be forgetting some. So anybody who's listening to this, leave it in the comments below which one I'm missing. But here's the crazy part. Think about how much momentum Geico started, and then Progressive just came in and absorbed it. Without getting into the politics of Geico getting poached, by the race promoters and burying Geico, burying Factory Connection and Ziggy and those guys. And obviously, Hoppo, this strikes a nerve with you because you were knee deep in it at all. But it's just a shame to me that all the work that Geico did, and then essentially they just got enveloped with, more money being thrown at it. But I just think it's cool that we can see bikes that have more of that marketing appeal. I still wonder why we don't have a Home Depot or a Lowe's bike out there, or Ricky had Makita for a while, but where'd that money go? How cool would it be to see a Makita bike back out there, or some of these power tool companies that are so badass? Seems like.
What about? I remember. What was the first outside sponsor I remember seeing was Surf? Was that Jeff? Was it Jeff Gibson? Do you guys remember that?
Jeff Leask.
Oh, that's right.
Jeff Glass.
That's right.
The Surf tires.
Glass. Yep.
With the Surf, and he had the Surf box van. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yep. There was an amateur kid in the mid-90s that had Hooters as a sponsor.
Ah,
I can't
okay.
remember his name.
Well,
there's been some few oddball ones that have come around.
Well, and then you look at something like My OnlyFans now, right? Yeah. The fact that they're trying to get more of the athletes to have a My Only's fan. Of course, it's got an adult. That's really their bread and butter. But I can't remember. Isn't that bad? I could picture the bike, but I can't remember who My OnlyFans is on. I want to say Harmon, but I don't think that's right. But again, you guys in the comments correct me.
Carl Harlow. Yeah.
Who is it?
Grant Harlow?
Carnow?
Grant Harlan or Carnow. Yeah.
I think it's Carnow. Now that you say it out loud, I think it's Carnow.
Yeah.
But, when we look at how our sport is completely riding on the backbones of energy drinks, I'm hearing Rockstar's out in 2 years. So that's going to create a vacuum and probably the demise of the Husky program. But, where it's no fault of our own putting so much emphasis on just Red Bull, Monster, Rockstar, and then you've got some of these other small ones that have tried to come up. But, we need the manufacturer. We need automobile manufacturers. We need technology companies. We need, but we could talk about this all day long, guys. For those of you that have been following the Vet Show, thank you so much. The numbers have grown tremendously. I want to pause for just a moment. I want to thank today's sponsor of the show. It's HBI Auto, our good friend Billy Wink. If you guys are into Porsches, this guy is your man. If you're looking to find a Porsche, new, old, or if you're looking for service on your Porsche, you definitely want to look up HBI Auto. They bring the show to you today, and we definitely appreciate their support. For those of you that have been following us, we started talking about the idea of how do we avoid injuries as a vet rider. And we previously spoke about flexibility. And today we're going to be talking about strength training. If you guys don't know Andrew's background, Andrew's got an extensive background racing motorcycles, obviously, mountain biking, triathlons, the whole 9 yards. James, same thing. He's doing Spartan races with his daughter, mountain biking. Recently got into his trials bike, which I think we'll be talking a little bit about here today, changing the portfolio up quite a bit. But as I've said numerous times on this show, what I love about the motocross and off-road world is name me a sport that you guys can't go do. Let that sink in for a moment. You could literally go snowboarding wakeboarding, rock climbing, do a triathlon, do a mountain bike race, run a 5K. There's nothing that we can't do. But if we take one of those athletes that specializes in those other sports, give them Hoppo CR 500. Number one, see if they can crank it. We all know what's going to happen. They're going to get bucked right over the front of the bars when that thing kicks back, right? But I just think it's so cool when we look at how much you guys are capable of doing because you're fit, and that fitness cross-germinates to so many other sports. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Is there any sport that you can think of that you wouldn't be able to do? Maybe you're not good at ballet, but you could do ballet. You know what I mean? There's not one sport you couldn't do. What am I missing?
No, I think that, yeah, and I think that this comes from the grit and determination to ride a motorcycle. Not saying you're on, sometimes you're on the fear of death there. Sometimes you get a buck or here or there. But again, I think it comes from that determination to hang on and hold on and push through certain things or barriers or whatever it may be, that rough track, bad track, wet track, where we don't give up, right? And I think that crosses over into a lot of those other disciplines that you can go, yeah, I can do that. Or they go, how did you do that? It's like, well, I don't know. I race motorcycles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, James? Any sport that comes to mind, sport, hobby that we can?
No. I mean, don't say it as being better than I am, but it's just there's just a confidence that's like, hey, it's how tell me the basics and I'll figure it out. As far as our balance is good and our coordination and strength base and aerobic fitness, it's just there. And it's kind of funny. Lexa, my daughter, she a lot of times gets annoyed with me because we'll try something and it's pretty easy. And she'll be like, you're just good at everything. Or even Jamie, my wife, she says the same thing. And I'm like, I'm not trying to ruin it. I'm just trying to be good at it. And I'm just trying to, to have fun. It is fun to try to learn something new. And, but nothing compares to as we were younger, lining up or trying to hit a jump for the first time. In fact, I remember when I decided to be a pilot, it was like, why could I not be a pilot? I mean, I've jumped these jumps. I've lined up and raced against these dudes. Granted, I may be going, an eighth of the speed of the greatest at the time, but the fear is still there. I still have 100% of the fear of everybody else, but it just gives you that confidence. It's an amazing sport. I really do love it, and I owe everything to it, honestly.
True.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say I second that the same, and I think that some of it, I could be wrong, but comes from, and Rob talks about this a lot, is the perception of speed or the depth of the scenery coming by, where you're navigating. It's not like being on the road, because I have this in the coaching department I'm in now with road guys and dirt guys. You have two different guys that can read terrain and some can't. Right? You have good road riders and you have good dirt riders. I always seem to find the dirt guys are better on the road than a road guy trying to teach them the road dirt. But it is that peripheral vision. It is speed sensory things coming at you, and I think that has a lot to do with it as well. Being able to read the terrain and navigate safely through it. Same last night as me racing a mountain bike. I still had to deal with rocks, or I had to pass someone, or I had dust, and that's just on a bicycle. It's the same depth perception that comes at you, and I think that some of it is key.
It's interesting you bring up mountain biking, because anybody who has been a student of mountain biking in the last 20 years knows who Aaron Gwynn is, one of probably the most accomplished downhill mountain bikers in the world. He contributes his success to, and I don't know if you guys have gone to any of these downhill World Cup courses, it's damn near straight down.
Yeah.
And they don't get to recon it. They get to walk it, and then they go. And he said his ability to learn a track on a motorcycle is what he contributes his success of being able to read a course and look at it and go, okay, hitting this rock garden, I'm going to hit it here. I'm going to land here. It's going to compress and rebound, which allows me to go here. He 100% contributes that to motocross. And my gosh, I mean, as soon as he got on the scene, he was very, very competitive, and then obviously was at the top. And, when we bring it into the world of physiology, obviously the show is for the vet riders. this is where I think it's so interesting. And Hoppo, you talked about that depth perception. I know every sport it's relevant, and where I'm going with this is I think it's interesting with moto in particular. The faster you go, the easier it is supposed to be, right? Especially when we're looking at hitting something that's rough. We spend all this money on suspension. We hire a specialist to set it up, and then you're going through it half the speed. So now the suspension can't do what it's supposed to. And the guy's like, well, if you'd hit it faster, it just seems so counterintuitive. Because when you look at anatomy and physiology, this riding position is not natural for the human body. This is. So whenever we're talking about the idea that the human body would always prefer to take the path of least resistance, it's biomechanically atrocious. So here we are, we're trying to get up into the right position. And that's what these last show and this show today is all about, is for you to get into the right anatomical position, looking further up the track, hinging the hips, all these buzzwords that these great riding coaches try to teach us, that the foundation has to be strength and flexibility. We spoke a lot about flexibility last show, about the idea that unfortunately, most people are stretching incorrectly when they really shouldn't be stretching at all. They're stretching. And when they do stretch, they do it incorrectly, and then they end up getting hurt. And then that hurt, causing some damage in the tissue, now causes scar tissue. So in an attempt to get more flexible, they actually lose range of motion because of scar tissue. And that's what I wanted to talk about today with you guys, because yeah, it's one thing when, I'm working with somebody and they're like, yeah, if you just grab an extra gear and a handful and you'll just blitz that section, and my little butt just puckers like there's no tomorrow. And I'm like, well, yeah, I get it on paper, but
Yeah.
like you were saying, Andrew, that ability to process that speed coming in is just next level. When Hoppo, you're talking about mountain biking last night. Is it relatively flat? Are there some big drop-offs? Like, what's the fastest thing you have to process?
So Victor Sheldon puts a series on called Quick and Dirty, and it's down in Escondido. And it's basically just a fire road. You get a lot of fast road guys, sprinters. It's a very, very easy course. So it's more of like a dirt crit race than anything.
Okay.
So, but still, you still have to navigate. And yes, you can draft on a mountain bike, as opposed to when people think only on the road that you can draft, but you can draft. So the perception there, I mean, there is still some hills and hollows. There is still some steep downs and so on. But again, and you can tell the people that can't sense that, either they're scared or they don't have much dirt experience. So again, and this is what I tell the guys when I coach them in the Alive Worldwide. It's like, I've done this for 50 years. So this to me is just like putting on my shoes or cleaning my teeth, right? So that brings out another side of me. Is like, I have to be able to interpret that, what I know, into basic terms. But I still, again, just trying to, well, I guess on a mountain bike or a bicycle, I mean, you got to have the legs at some point to get up to that, being able to read that speed. I mean, a downhill is a little different, but you're still navigating, you're still in and out, you're off the wheel, you're on the wheel, dirt, rocks. There's just a lot of sensory coming at you, especially on the dirt, as you know, more than the road.
And this is something that we're going to really dive deep in today, is when you're on that ragged edge, the course is relatively easy. Let's say it's even relatively flat. It's now, do you have that raw power in your thighs, lower back, and do you have the cardiovascular system to be able to stay with that line? And then when you are wheel to wheel, to your point, Andrew, the fear of overlapping, heck, you probably rub the back wheel to tell them, hey, speed up. It's kind of like touching their feet in a swim. You're like, hey, I'm back here, let's go. But you're not worried about buzzing it because you know how not to go down. We'll talk about that here in a second. And that's one of the reasons why I think strength training has to be complemented with flexibility if we're going to talk about and wrap up the subject of avoiding injuries. James, I wanted to challenge you on something. When you and your daughter are doing these Spartan races, and you've done some mountain bike races, you've got your trials bike, when you're looking at this idea of having the foundation of strength, when you're doing those Spartan races, do you feel it's more of a strength issue? Is it more of a cardio? What would you say the ratio? We know you're using both energy systems, but in your perspective, what percentage?
That's a good question, because if the event it really depends on the duration of the event, because if it's a shorter event and it's just like a sprint, then I could say, oh, you know what? I think it's more of a cardio thing. But on some of the longer ones that have taken us like over an hour and a half, then it's more of a muscular fatigue issue. So it kind of goes both ways. But what is kind of interesting is having the presence of mind to try to evaluate yourself while you're doing these things. So you could say, oh, hey, wait a second. You know what? My lungs felt great, but it just seems like my legs got tired, or I got to this one, or I got to the rope climb and my back was tired. So, while you're doing this real time, you're kind of checking this list and saying, okay, this is what I need to work on to get better to do it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes plenty of sense. And this is where I'm hoping the listeners are starting to see how these pieces of the puzzle come together. Because at the very beginning of all of this, you've got to understand the inverse relationship between volume and intensity. You articulated it perfectly, James. If you're doing something 30 minutes, of course you can drop the hammer and go, it's 30 minutes. But if you're doing something for 90 minutes to 3 hours, well, you better do a checks and balance and figure out how fast you can go and still finish that distance in that time. And this is the analogy, and we talk a lot about this off the air, but if I were to challenge anybody to a drag race, let's say it's a half mile, quarter mile, whatever distance you want to choose, right? And you had 4 bikes and it was a 65 up to a 450. Every single person would choose the 450. And then when I go, why? And they go, well, they kind of look at you like you've drank your breakfast. They're like, what's faster? Okay, well, what defines faster? And through some deductive reasoning, people start to have the epiphany, it's got a bigger piston, it's got a bigger carburetor. Go with me here that bigger bikes have carburetors still. It's got a bigger pipe. Well, as soon as I screw one of those 3 systems up, your strength base is your piston, your carburetor is your aerobic engine, and your pipe is your capillary beds. So with the conversation of today's, hey, how do we avoid injury, right? We talked about flexibility. This is why I cannot emphasize enough strength is at the foundation of injury prevention. Now, yes, strength is going to be at the foundation of speed because, again, would you rather, if we take those 3 scenarios, go with me here, we take Hoppo's CR 500, but we take a CR 85 carburetor and we put it on it. You go, well, that's stupid, Rob. The piston can't get enough air fuel, so we never see the power of the 500. Okay, you got to build up your aerobic engine. Well, let's reverse it. We take that CR 500 carburetor, we stuff it onto a CR 85. It isn't going to make the 85 produce 500 power. Now, when you put it in mechanical terms, people go, yeah, that makes sense. Or if we take a 85 pipe and we put it on Andrew's 500, and you're like, well, dummy, it's not going to get rid of that combustion. Of course it's going to back up. Okay, well, welcome to the world of not getting injured. Because what we've talked about so far is everybody listening wants to ride faster and longer, whether you're a rec rider or you're highly competitive. Well, what's our number one physical limiter? It could be strength. It could be aerobic capacity. It could be the inability to get rid of waste. So which one is it? That's why we test with all of our athletes. Obviously, James, you've been with us for a long period of time. Andrew, we've worked together as coach-client, and now you're one of our elite coaches out there spearheading these questions that people come up with. So my question to you guys is, when you're out there as a vet rider, and Andrew, you're out there at Glen Helen, you're out there at World Vets, you're out there at Mammoth, what would you say is the biggest limiter for the community that's watching this show? Where do you think that there's a limitation? If today's subject is about avoiding injury, is it a strength issue or is it a cardiovascular issue, in your opinion?
That's a great question. It's a loaded question as well, because what comes to mind to me immediately, and I learned this from you and I try and teach it to people, is I think a lot of it starts in the morning, like what we spoke about 3 hours before, trying to hit that 1,000 to 1,500 calories of the morning to get get to the bathroom, do your business, do other stuff. So then you're only topping off through the day, because most people I see going undercaloried, and then you're in a deficit all the way through the day. And when you first told me that, I was like, there's no way I can eat 1,000 calories at 5 a.m, right? Whether 3 hours before, whether it's bicycle or moto or whatever it is. So that took me a long time to get to that. And then when you explain it properly and you have people try it and do it, and they have that aha moment, I think that kind of sets the catalyst for the day. Because if you go to the start line with all those calories in there and you're only topping off through the day, you should not really run into a deficit in a 20-minute, let's just say a 20-minute moto. You're only topping off, whether it is energy fuel or, what other supplements, gels, goos, whatever you want to call them, you're only just topping off. So I believe that's the catalyst for a good either bicycle race, motorcycle race, or whatever, sport you're going to do.
James, how about yourself, both as an athlete and what you've seen riding with other vet riders?
I mean, I love what Andrew said, and I will second that. A lot of people don't truly understand what they're supposed to be eating. I was just at a Loretta's camp prior to this year's Loretta's, and they were asking me what I was eating, and I told them, and everybody else was like, they weren't even eating an eighth of what I ate. But back to your original question of, for me personally, after age 47, it's strength. But I've been with you for a while. I got this really good base, but I just noticed after 47, if I'm not staying on the strength, I'm seeing my numbers slide just a little bit. So for me, it's strength at this age.
And again, I promised the listeners we didn't pre-rehearse this. Um, the thing that I find interesting is when we look at the subject of an injury, think about the scenarios, right? You're riding a little over the front of your skis. Your brain can't process it. You mistime something. You yard dirt yourself. Or you're at a speed that the muscles can't sustain it. So we end up transitioning from standing to sitting earlier than we should. We throw the balance of the bike off. That pitches us off. We get yard darted again. I want to change the subject of an injury and go a completely different direction if you guys are okay with it. And that
Sure.
is strength training is of no value unless it's supplemented with flexibility. That's why I wanted show number 19 to be about flexibility, because I want people to understand how to do it correctly. But then when you bring it in and you introduce it with strength training, no disrespect to anybody who may have a weightlifting background, but we've all been to the gym where the guy is so developed that he can't straighten his arms, right? The biceps are so damn strong that the triceps are not strong enough to get the arm back into anatomical neutral. Now, let's just imagine you've got these big, beautiful biceps. All the chicks are whistling at you at the beach, right? Your arms have this 2 or 3 degree bend, and now you get pitched off the bike, and just the sheer velocity whips your arm straight. Now we rip the long head of biceps off the top of the shoulder. And I hope that for everybody who's listening, I hope that illustration, let that sink in for a moment. Because if we jump into something like dabbing your foot, so let's say you send me a video and you're like, damn it, I keep dabbing my foot. My challenge to you is the top of the thigh not strong enough to hold the foot up with the weight of the boot at the end of the foot, with the braking bumps, going through and transitioning from standing to sitting, or is it a tight hamstring that is so guitar string tight, it just keeps pulling the leg down? Now you've got an injured knee. We're seeing more in the hip area because of knee braces. So the energy always goes north. Your ankle's wrapped up in the boot. You've got a knee brace, tib, fib, all the way around femur. So the energy goes to the next joint. Now the head of the femur is getting jacked up around the deep lateral rotators. So the subject of strength training has got to be accompanied in the category of injury. And look at what we've already talked about today. If you have low blood sugar, you can't process speed. So now your transition from brake to gas, gas to brake is going to be negatively impacted. Risk of injury goes up. If we don't have good flexibility and strength in the quads, you're dabbing your foot. Now you tear your knee up or your hips up. And yet when somebody thinks strength training, they think just the big muscle head dude in the gym. That's what I wanted to get your opinion on when you guys are out there, guys you ride with and stuff like that. Are your buddies lifting? If you are by YouTube, throw a comment down below. Do you guys like to lift? Do you not like to lift? Have you gotten hurt lifting? I'd be very curious to see what people's personal experiences are. But when you guys are out there, are you seeing guys making strength training as serious as you are?
I mean, I think that I'm not going to say I have a love-hate relationship with lifting. I like to lift. And I know the benefits of it. I know that it's, like you said, strength. It is based, and they both do tie into each other. Like a good VO2 max, a clean diet, and some strength to, I mean, because basically, I mean, when you really break it down, you're wrestling a 220-pound gyroscope, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And I think, Rob, we touched on this years ago, and it's like, how do I get such a high heart rate on something that I do not have a reciprocating motion on? My leg, I'm not on a bicycle or a motorcycle. I mean, I'm on a motorcycle, sorry. But how do I get that heart rate so high when I'm not really moving? Yeah, I'm getting bucked around and I'm trying to stop from crashing or it throwing me over the bars. So there's a lot ties back to, again, the strength to be able to wrestle that bike, whether it's set up correctly or poorly. That's a different discussion. But to have the strength to be able to wrestle that machine for 20 minutes is another art as well.
What do you think,
So,
James?
Yeah, I mean, that's I like that. I mean, you're not watching, nothing against a guy on a Harley, but he's not going down Main Street, with a max heart rate of 178. But if you take that same guy on a Harley and you put him on a closed course, like what are those things called? The baggers. You've seen those guys
Baggers.
race.
the bags,
God bless. And now they're throwing it around. Well, that's a whole nother animal. That's not just riding a Harley going down Main Street. You're controlling all that mass, and not only that, but you're also trying to maintain a position that complements the way the motorcycle was made, which is not easy to do. You could do it maybe for a lap, and then things start falling apart, and it's and I think you've mentioned before, Rob, about safety. I think that's the biggest thing. Nobody wants anybody get hurt. It ruins it for everybody. But to understand that, hey, listen, we need this strength, we need this flexibility, because it's not, we're going to sit here like Johnny Campbell and hold our bike up after the race. We're not lifting it over our heads, but in order to maintain the bike from pitching us left or right or throwing us over the bars because it hit something and it upset that gyroscopic effect, we need some sort of strength base along with the flexibility as well.
James, it's funny you bring up the baggers. We were fortunate enough to work with Kyle Wyman, who's been kind of dominating the baggers series ever since it came about. So shout out to Kyle, great kid. I just enjoyed working with him for the time that we had. He's now Harley's #1 guy out there. So props to Kyle. And like I say, it's amazing to watch those big bikes go in, out, especially being here in Daytona, watch them drop into the chicane. And it's a different
Those guys are
world.
rad.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, you guys both have referenced it indirectly. And we go back, Andrew, you mentioned the gyroscope. And then, James, you just mentioned the balance side of it. I want to make sure that the listeners are not missing one of what I believe is one of the biggest mistakes we see in the gym. And that is going in the gym and sitting down on a piece of equipment.
Yeah.
The one that always comes to mind is the seated bicep curl, right? Besides the fact that any fixed piece of equipment, this is why, and I've got to be a little bit, well, don't need to. This is why I'm not a big fan of stationary bikes at the gym. Because if you look at when you're adjusting the seat, each one of those holes are about a 32nd to an eighth of an inch apart. And if you know anything about cycling, we are literally measuring, we're moving the seat post up a millimeter. We're moving the fore-aft position of the seat by the millimeter. We're changing your cleats in the shoe by a millimeter, forwards, backwards, in, out. Now you just strap yourself onto a stationary bike. You could destroy your patella tendons by using a bike that's not fit for you. Now, is it better than nothing? I guess you could choose your battles on that. I would rather not use I'd rather not use a stationary bike. I'll always use a Concept 2 rower because biomechanically I'm not going to hurt myself. But when you walk in the gym and you sit down, you've taken what's called proprioceptive balance out of the equation. So if you're listening to this at home, and you can do this without getting hurt, I want you to stand on your right leg, and I want you to bend your left leg at 90 degrees. And I'd like you to get your eyes to focus on something across the room. Now, at the count of 5, I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to try to not put that left foot down. 4, 3, 2, go. Now, for those of you that were able to try this, you're going to notice the very first thing is your right foot's going to try to claw the ground. Welcome to proprioceptive balance. You may notice that you're becoming the leaning Tower of Pisa. Welcome to proprioceptive balance. Now, what's interesting is open your eyes, stand on one leg, and look across the room, and you probably are going to stand relatively better than you did when you closed your eyes. So I always use that as an illustration of proprioceptive balance. Now, this is why the gym has to emulate riding a motorcycle, off-road or even on the motocross track. I want you to think about the 3 dimensions of the motorcycle: left peg, right peg, in front of the pegs and behind the pegs, and above and below the seat. So all of our athletes, they lift weights in 3 dimensions of movement, directly or indirectly, from the start of the workout to the end of the workout. Now, if you're Superman and you can do shoulder press with 75, 80 pounds, you will not be able to do it standing on one leg. I will absolutely guarantee that. Now, I've had some adult conversations online where people say, well, you've got to be strong first for moto and then bring in balance. Negatory. Absolutely negatory. If I go with me for exaggerated terms, if I could take a 700cc motor and put it in a dirt bike, but I don't put the motor centered of the bike, how's that bike going to ride? It's all got to be balanced. If I take one fork leg and I put it 3 millimeters higher than the other, how's that bike going to ride? Now, you'll get some guys, and I'll call them meatheads in a fun, joking way, right? You'll get the meathead guys that are like, nope, it's all about power. What do we joke about? Usable power on a motorcycle. If it can't be put to the ground and put to use, it's of no value. And I'm not trying to throw a bunch of cliches out here. I want people to change the way that they look at strength training if you ride a motorcycle. Andrew, you teach this all the time. If you know this as a listener, I'm not insulting your intelligence. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of this. Your belly button up controls the front wheel. Belly button down controls the rear wheel. But what about that left and the right? What about if your belly button's in front of the pegs? Now your front wheel happy. Now you're tucking the front end. What happens if that belly button is behind the pegs? Now you've got arm pump. So as we continue to tie these all together, I want to start with the 3 dimensions of movement. James, from your standpoint, what's the hardest for you, upper body or lower body, just out of curiosity?
Lower body.
How about for you, Hoppo?
Probably top body sometimes, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always interested because, like you said, Andrew, I know a lot of people, myself included, I have a love-hate relationship with the gym. Every single time I lift weights, I don't care if it's I don't care if it's early. I don't care if it's during race season and I'm lifting light or it's preseason and I'm lifting extremely heavy. I always get a headache the next morning when I wake up. It's just those muscles on the back of my neck. They always just get so tight. Even if I lay on my foam roller, trigger point, Theracane, all these. So I don't really enjoy. I'd be lying through my eye teeth if I looked you guys in the eye and said, oh, I love weightlifting. I don't like it because I get a headache. But like you said, Hoppo, I do it because it's a necessary evil. I know I've got to do it. So I don't really enjoy it. But at least I can, for the people who are listening and understand proprioceptive balance, if I can say to you, hey, your right leg is 3 inches smaller than your left leg because you broke your leg 10 years ago, we need to get that muscle symmetry started. And this is where we go and we break the body down into left and right. It matches the pegs. What you do above and below the belly button, that matches the motorcycles, above and below the seat. And then the front of the body and the back of the body, your chest versus your rhomboids in between your shoulder blades. From your perspective, guys, when you're on the motorcycle, whether it's your own experience or riding with the guys that you ride with, what do people complain the most of? And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, want to leave us a comment, I'd be curious, what is your biggest struggle area? And more importantly, why? From your perspective as riders, what is it they're complaining of and why do you think that is?
I think
a lot of
probably.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say, I would say that the biggest consensus of what people would say would probably be arm pump, from what I hear.
How about yourself, James?
Yeah, I mean, I am going to say arm pump, no doubt. But then this kind of somewhat leads into technique as well. A lot of time people are complaining about not being able to, with cornering and stuff, and they're and it's a lot of times their legs, their knees are bent way far forward, and they're putting all of everything in their hamstrings or into their quads, I'm sorry.
And see what I
I
think,
see that.
Go ahead, Hoppo,
I was just going to
excuse me.
say, like with the role I have and my other job of teaching entry level people to ride, I see that every day. Exactly what James said. You know, you talk about the belly button, you talk about the hips over the foot pegs, the head over the chin, and that perfect position. You know, and when you get out of that position, and I heard this analogy the other day as to where the bike will tell you what you're doing wrong. Right? If the chain's slapping, you're too low RPM, you're in the wrong gear. If it's revving, your gears are off. If you're washing the front end, you're over the back too far, or vice versa, back and forth. And we run into this problem a lot with the guys, like you said, either Banshee riders, off-road riders, road riders, Harley riders, cruiser, that type of guy. Where, and some of it is our terminology, where you say, hey, sit on the bike properly. Well, majority of those guys with no dirt experience will just sit down like they're on a lounge chair or a sit down jet ski, and they just sit. What we actually mean to say is we need to sit forward, like sit forward into the center seat, put the leg out, and then everything is in balance and in tune with where the motorcycle works the best. Granted, we're on a perfectly set up motorcycle spring rates, and on and on and on. So at the end, the motorcycle does tell you what it wants to go faster.
James, finish your thought, boss.
No, that was pretty much it. And as Andrew said initially about the arm pump as well, the thing that I noticed with myself is the only time I will see that arm pump is when the rest of the body is unable to maintain. I'm not able to maintain my attack position. And now I'm just like Andrew said, I'm just sitting here passively because I've gotten fatigued, and now I'm using my arms just to try to salvage the rest of what I got left.
You guys know that we did the Anatomy of Arm Pump series, and we've sold a couple thousand of those. The biggest and most positive feedback I got was, and used the word earlier, Hoppo, was that aha moment where they're like, I never realized how hydration could lead to arm pump. I didn't realize how a lack of strength could lead to arm pump. I didn't realize being inflexible could lead to arm pump. Sure, we know that there's a right and a wrong position on the bike, but what's keeping you from getting there initially? And then, of course, what's keeping you from staying there?
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to, like we said earlier, the body's always going to take the path of least resistance. So we have to rewire that. And you can only rewire it when you have the strength and the endurance to offset what we normally would want to do. I mean, who doesn't know if you stand up on a motorcycle, it's much easier than sitting down. Until your legs are so damn tired and your low back's blown out, you're going to sit down. It's just the body's going to be like, nope, I don't care. I'm going to get bucked around like a horse, but I don't want to stand anymore. Andrew, you had a thought. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Okay.
It'll come back to me. Yeah.
No, and this is the kind of stuff I want to kind of move the conversation forward just a little bit. Depending on when you're listening to this as a recording, right? You need to recognize that your strength training needs to be broken down into periodization. We use that word in physiology, which means we take 12 months out of the year and we break it down into different components. Very simple numbers, right? You could have preseason, which is going to be 4 months. You could have pre-competitive, which could be 4 months. Then you've got an 8 to 10 month period. Another 4 to 6 months of a competitive phase. And we break it down into phase maybe 1, 2, and maybe 3. We try to peak only 3 times a year. Now, in the amateur racing scene for vet racers, it's hard to find only 3 races, right? Because we can, especially for you being in California, you guys can race every single weekend. We live in Florida. We can race every single weekend. We don't really have a winter. Strength training has to be broken down accordingly, right? So when you're in the gym, you need to be lifting in the 3 dimensions of movement: front, back, top, bottom, left, right. But then you've also got to change. Early season needs to be maximum strength, because it goes back to, let's get the biggest piston we can possibly build. That's got to be complemented with a big aerobic system. So the weight load is really high, but the load on the cardio is very low. You build the cardiovascular system, but you build the strength base. It's also, not to get too down into the weeds, another benefit of training in heart rate zone 2 is the development of the capillary beds that we were talking about. The specific terminology is called angiogenesis. If you're subhypoxic just by a smidge, that's why heart rate zone 2 is so productive. That's what produces more capillary beds. So think about it. If you're literally training too hard, you're tipping into 3, you're not developing any more capillary beds. So you got a big piston, big carburetor, small pipe. You're only as strong as your weakest link.
So I had this guy on tour, and he was a previous NFL coach. Super, super nice guy. Never ridden a motorcycle before. We had to get him up to speed and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Now I've become friends with the guy. I follow him on Instagram and all sort of stuff. I mean, this guy can bench and squat 400 or 500 pounds. So I had to take this guy. Super nice guy. Anyway, we had to start from the basics, like teaching your wife or your girlfriend to ride. And he was so damn strong. I mean, he could have bench pressed those bikes all day long. But again, trying to teach him that technique of what we spoke about earlier, and this ties into the strength thing, right? He was essentially a bodybuilder. He was a football player in his early days, strong guy. Yet 5 minutes out of the correct posture, he was done.
Yeah.
He couldn't hold himself up. He was tired. He was like, man, like I said, he was bench pressing more than the bike, or squatting, or lift, or dead squat, whatever you want to do, whatever in that one-dimensional lift, he could do that bike 2 times over. But without that, the hips over the foot pegs, the navel on the seat, and the head, I mean, just trying to hold that up. I mean, he struggled with that. He hit the deck so many times. And he said to me, he goes, man, I miss this. I'm like, what are you talking about? Hitting the ground? He goes, yeah, I haven't played football in 15, 20 years. I like to hit. And I'm like, well, you can hit the ground all day long, but he's like, I ain't run out of talent anymore at my age. So, but again, that kind of ties into what we're talking about. Is like, he was so strong, yet out of that position, and you would watch him ride, and then again, you could see the bike telling him what it wanted. He wanted him to move back, but he just, again, you're talking for a guy that just started riding a motorcycle at 40, 45 years old. So that's a whole different ballgame. But to answer the strengths, yeah, he was so strong, yet that body position and those muscles that weren't worked in those 3 dimensionals, he was weak. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Please don't take that out of context.
No, I was actually going to elaborate on that, because you said that he can go 3 to 4 minutes and then he would get tired. And I really hope that the listeners are biting into what you just said. Can bench a car, right? Can lift the motorcycle, deadlift, squat, all of that. That's where we get into the word functional strength. You even use the word one direction, right? That unidirectional. And this is what's so amazing. If we were to sit down with a blank piece of paper and we were to say, why did that gentleman get, air quotes here, tired? It wasn't a strength issue. So you can check that box. We know that that was not the issue. Well, then why did he get tired? Is it because he's so strong, he's inflexible? Is he so strong, but he's flexible for every other position except what was necessary on the motorcycle? Or is his lack of cardiovascular system able to support the demands of the muscle, and that's why he goes and falls out of that ideal body position? Because what people don't realize, and you alluded to this earlier, a 220, 230 pound motorcycle at speed will have a much higher heart rate of pact than even higher than running. We have some of the best runners in the world that we're fortunate enough to coach. Their heart rates would never get remotely as close to the max heart rate of a motorcycle racer, simply because of the load. So think about this. From your knees to your belly button, those are your quads, right? That includes your hip flexors and everything else. They're the largest consumer of oxygen in the body. Rough track, higher heart rate. So now, Andrew, you go back to what you were saying about that gentleman getting tired. If you don't have enough of an aerobic engine to get the oxygen to meet the demands of the raw power that's produced, you're going to shut down. i.e., you got an air vent, you got a hose in your carburetor that's pinched. It can't get into the carburetor, can't get into the motor. The motor doesn't produce the peak power. And we can keep moving those 3 parts: piston, carburetor, pipe. This gentleman got tired. We know his piston was huge. You saw it, right? Like you said, you could bench the motorcycle. So then we have to go, okay, was it a carburetor issue? We don't know. We don't have enough work with him physiologically to help educate him. Or he just loads up with lactic acid because his exhaust pipe can't get rid of the metabolic waste. All he knows is I'm squatting, I'm sitting down, elbows drop, hips go back. He's trying to catch his breath. It's not a strength issue. Now, if Andrew,
I guess if you put it into that context, when you look at the way he trains for football and all that sort of stuff, where it is short bursts, it's a sprint or it's a hit, it's a tackle, whichever way, and yet you're on a grass track for 10, 15 minutes, right? Now you're into the aerobic side of it, where he's short bursts. And then I guess I have a question to you is, when you talk about VO2 max and all this sort of stuff, it's like, is there a VO2 max that's good for motocross, do you think? Or is that something that just naturally acquires as the leaner you get and the stronger you get, the fitter you get?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question, because if the three of us are having an adult beverage and we're just talking about the subject of VO2 max, when somebody says, what's your VO2 max, you got to remember that that's in a testing environment. You're able to produce a number. Anytime you go into a clinical environment and you're testing VO2 max, number one, the AC is running, so it's dehumidified and it's in the mid 70s, maybe even upper 60s. Except for those who live in northern climates, right? When's the last time you rode your motorcycle with zero humidity and 65 to 68 degrees?
Sure.
Not many.
Yeah.
Then when you're in the testing environment, you're either on a treadmill or you're on a bike erg. So you're wearing next to nothing, right? How much gear are you wearing when you're running? How much gear do we wear when we ride? Literally every square centimeter of our skin is covered. So now our inability to wick away heat is going to negatively impact the VO2 max number if you're looking at it on the motorcycle. So that's why I think your question is so on point and has so much meat to chew on. If somebody says, is a VO2 max of 72 great? Maybe. It's not good if yours used to be 81. It's really good if it used to be 52. It's like resting heart rate. Hey, my resting heart rate's 48. Is that good? Not if it used to be 41. It's fantastic if it used to be 56. It's all relevant to you as an individual.
Yes.
Now, I have taken athletes who have on paper, lower VO2 max and beat the living shit out of somebody who had a big VO2 max number on the track. That's why I think you've got so much on your comment and question, because a large VO2 max number is a numerical number that measures oxygen uptake. That VO2 is volume of oxygen uptake. Not trying to insult anyone's skills, but just to clarify. But here's the $1 million question. Are we truly testing the validity of the VO2 max number if you weren't able to push the test long enough because of a lack of power, strength?
Right.
Were you not able to push the VO2 max test because you ran out of oxygen, not because of the lack of oxygen, but you crossed your anaerobic threshold and the production of lactic acid accumulated and you weren't able to dissipate it, i.e. capillary beds. So the accumulation of metabolic waste shut down your VO2 max number because you went anaerobic too early. So that's a pacing and a strategy area. That's not a VO2 max assessment.
That's an awesome analogy right there, because I find on bicycles, I run out of legs before I run out of lungs.
Yes.
Right, last night. So I ran out of legs, I recovered, and then, by lap 3, I felt pretty good. And I do struggle with lactic acid buildup. I cannot sprint out of the start like some of these guys for the life of me, right?
Yeah.
And then, eventually everything kind of comes back in. And I've had some pretty high VO2 numbers in my time, 64, and, I'm back down around 50s. But it's the same thing. I always run out of legs before I run out of lungs on a bicycle.
James, do you mind sharing with everybody what our race day warm-up looks like?
Yeah, I mean, well, long story short, we're basically trying to get the lactic acid shuffle started. So we get our body comfortable with, getting rid of recognizing the lactic acid, and then get it primed to be able to take it out of our body, which is priceless.
And see, it's so important because, Andrew, how many of our listeners have the same struggle you do? Gait drops. If they try to go with those cats, every muscle in their body's burning, right? That accumulation of lactic acid or the backing up of the lactic acid, it just shuts the system down. This is why, and we're not going to give away all of our Coca-Cola syrup solutions, but this is why it's so important to know if you're a quick twitch or a slow twitch guy. Quick twitch, gate drops, you can sprint, i.e. 100 meters, Usain Bolt. Slow twitch, latter part of the moto, you come on like a diesel engine, you're a marathoner, okay? So we have ways that we can trick the body so that you can be a better sprinter even though you have slow twitch muscle fibers. Amateur racing is extremely difficult because, number one, we don't always know what time the race is going to start. So it's not like in a 5K, it's easy. When they say the gun's going to start at 7, it's very easy. I have James go to the race venue. He runs the 5K course as a warm-up. He's got about 20 minutes to spare. He goes back, uses the restroom, tops off on energy fuel. He goes up and he's doing little striders 3 minutes before the start of the race. He's sweating profusely. Then when the gun goes off, boom, the lactic acid shuffle's already moving. Why? Because we knew exactly when the race was going to start. That's what makes pro racing easy with TV. When they say it's got to drop at 7:02, it's dropping at 7:02. And a lot of people go, oh, who cares? Why does it matter? Because of what you just articulated, Hoppo, right? If you warmed up at your rig and then you went and sat in pre-staging for 30 minutes, you've lost all the benefits of a warm-up.
And that is 110% correct, because I ran into that problem last night. Because here's the deal: when you do this bicycle race, and I love the way Victor does this, but we all go in waves, 1 minute increments. But if I want to do good or win my class or be on the podium, I got to be on the front line of that start. So I went and rode the course last night, did the 20-minute loop, come back, felt pretty good. It's like, if I can do 4 of that, hold that pace, I'll be pretty good. But then the wind starts blowing, and then I'm down there 10 minutes before the start. I'm trying to shuffle and push and elbow and get up to the front. It's like, now I'm cold.
Yep.
And again, I've ridden with enough cyclists over my time that it's just like arm pump. You talk to some guys, never get it. Doesn't matter what bike they ride. Doesn't matter if they're out drinking all night. They don't get it. I've always had it majority of my career. The days I don't get it, I think I'm world champion. And the same with the lactic acid. It's like, when we come out of the start and you go down the boat ramp, you start climbing this hill. It's like, man, and a 16-year-old girl passes me. It's like, that's pretty demoralizing at times. Like, you got to, and that's the part we talked about earlier in the show. It's like that digging deep. It's like, you're not going to, this is not going to beat me. And then eventually it frees up. But, whether you touch on bicarb soda and all that sort of stuff to help the lactic acid. And I do dabble in that to try and help with that. But,
sure.
And I think that, like James was talking about his warm-up program. And I think that, and I probably speak for a lot of these people that, like for me, like Glen Helen is roughly an hour away from my house, right? So I get up, I try and hit 1,000 calories of a morning, or I snack on the way, get to the bathroom, get there. Hopefully there's no traffic issues, sign up, get ready. And then I've got this tight window of opportunity to try and warm up before practice. And I think majority of amateurs, vets, or whatever kind of all fall into that program. It's like, does this mean I'm up at 3:30 now instead of 4:35 to get that ample warm up in before? Or do you go, I'm just going to go do 10 minutes of practice and then I'll warm up again after practice? The body never forgets. It might be tired or sore or whatever. So I think majority of people kind of run into that, as I do as well.
Sure. Well, a couple of the things that you said right there, let's kind of back the train up just for a moment, because I'm hoping it piqued the interest of the listeners. There's a difference between being metabolically warmed up and being physically hot. James has been to Loretta's several times. Sometimes they're sitting in pre-staging for an hour to an hour and 30 minutes, right? So if you're back at your rig and you do a warm-up and now you go and you sit in pre-staging for more than 5 to 10 minutes, you've lost the metabolic warm-up. So what you did, in James's case, he's in very good shape. He just wasted a lot of calories. We're not worried about him not being fit enough. James is fit enough that we could literally warm up for an hour and race a 3-hour GNCC. That's the type of fitness that we've built over the years intentionally because of some of the things he likes to do. But what people don't realize is just because you're sitting there physically sweating does not mean metabolically you're warmed up. That's where you keep hearing the word that James mentioned, lactic acid shuffle moving. So we have a very specific formula that we have all of our athletes do as a warm-up to get the lactic acid shuffle moving. Now, some of the listeners, no sarcasm whatsoever. I totally respect it. They'll say, "What, Rob? If I do a 20-minute warm up as you're recommending, I'll be too tired to race." Well, that's a fitness issue. We got to get that dialed in first
Right.
and foremost.
Correct.
But that's where we have to reverse engineer. I want the listeners to think about this. Usain Bolt, in his prime, fastest man on 2 feet, runs 100 meters in less than 9 seconds. But his warm up is almost 2 hours long. And then after he runs, he cools down for an hour. If you guys watch the Netflix special, watch the sprinters. They have a separate track that they warm up. Then they come in and they do a little bit more. Then they race. Then they go back to the other track and they cool down like a quarter horse. If you look at the Tour de France, those guys might have a 6-hour stage. They'll sit on the stationary trainer underneath the awning with a fan blowing on them for 60 minutes to 2 hours on the trainer, and they're going hard. They're getting the lactic acid shuffle moving. Then after they do the 5-6 hour stage, they're right back on the trainer again. Now, again, I love the sport of moto and I love the world of off-road, but isn't it interesting that our sport is probably one, maybe of 2 sports that I can think off the top of my head that doesn't think a warm-up and a cool-down matter. But every other main sport does. Isn't that crazy? So the subject of staying injury-free, go ahead, Hoppo, go right ahead.
I was just going to, do you think, because I agree with what you say, and having dabbled in other disciplines like yourself, it's like, is that because of the intensity that it produces to race? Let's just talk, Supercross on Saturday night. At that level, do you think that it's the intensity why they don't do that? They're trying to save it in reserve.
I'm not sure what your question is.
I mean, when you talk about warming up for that amount of time, the cyclists, Tour de France, and all that sort of stuff, and why we don't do it, as you said, in the moto industry or off-road. I get cycling because I've done 6, 7, 8 hours on bicycles. I understand all that. But when you look at, Kenny or any of those guys that's going to go in there, yes, they're on cycle dynes, or I see them warm up on whatever they do, but it's only 20, 30 minutes, get that sweat, then get down there. And I wonder if, because of the intensity, the high heart rate that it takes to sustain that 20 minutes on a Supercross track, that they're saving plenty for reserve. Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense, but our sport doesn't understand the science enough to make that executive decision and do it because of that. Usually and it's interesting you bring up Kenny, because when Kenny first came over, the Lawrence brothers do it, Max Anstey does it, and Kenny. Those 4 guys are usually the ones that you'll see behind the bikes doing jumping jacks. Right. They're the ones that are moving and getting their heart rate up. And I personally believe it's because they're European. The European mindset is just completely different than America. But to go back to your question and statement about because the intensity is so high, think about our 5K runners, right? They're running 13, 14-minute 5Ks. And if you look at their heart rate and their intensity and you look at their lactate accumulation profiles, it does accumulate, but this is where it takes our conversation full circle. All of us produce lactate, some a little more aggressively than others. Like you said, Andrew, you've always struggled with high levels of lactate. Now we have to look at the system that dissipates it, capillary beds. You have to look at the system that creates it, muscular strength and aerobic engine. I liked what you said earlier. The legs give out before the cardio does for you. So if as we were continuing to develop your race program, we knew that it wasn't a cardiovascular issue. It was the accumulation of lactic acid and your legs giving out. It wasn't about pushing your ticker. Not to put James on a pedestal here because he's with us live today, but, literally he went and raced Daytona, very, very short races. Or was it the other way around? Did you do Daytona J-Day? I think it was.
J-Day first.
And J-Day was, walk me through the duration of that.
J-Days was 230 minutes, motos, 230s.
And then come back a week later. It was a week, wasn't it, James?
5 days or 4 days, yeah.
And so the idea, and again, this goes back to what we said at the onset of our conversation today. That's what I love about moto. Every single energy system in the human body is tapped into, whether you're racing 6 minutes or 6 hours on a motorcycle. And here's why. Every single time you bend down and pick the motorcycle up after you drop it, that's anaerobic by nature. That's why your heart rate goes through the roof. All strength training is anaerobic by nature. So someone like myself, who I have a love-hate relationship, I probably suffer. I'm not as good as I could be if I would have a little bit more of a positive attitude towards the gym. I do enough to get in and out, but like I could do more and get better at it. So when you start to realize, okay, I bend down to pick the bike up, that's anaerobic by nature. If I prick your finger and I take a lactate, if I apply a lactate test to it, a lactate strip, I'm going to see an abnormally high spike in lactate from just a minute ago, simply because you lifted the motorcycle. Now, when the gait drops, the percentage of your maximum heart rate dictates the accumulation of lactic acid. And this ties really well into our conversation today about why do athletes get injured? Because you're racing above your pay grade. You're racing above your fitness level. You're racing at a level that's creating so much metabolic waste you can't clean it. Therefore, you're either going to slow down or you're going to yard dart yourself. So that's why we always say all three systems have to be developed on par. Anybody who's trained with me knows I always use the analogy of railroad tracks. Strength-based and aerobic engine, they have to develop together, or if one gets bigger than the other, you derail. Andrew, last night at the mountain bike race, your legs became the derailment of your race. It wasn't that you couldn't keep going, it's just the legs were done, right? So now you're in a parent-teacher conference. Your legs are like, hey, I love going fast, but we need more oxygen. And then your cardio is like, hey, you need to get tougher because I've got plenty, but you're not strong enough to keep pushing it. You're in a parent-teacher conference all day long.
Yeah.
And this is where we get into the subject of being injured. Imagine, and this is where we tie in all of our conversations, you have to have periodization of strength training, you have to have periodization of cardiovascular, and it needs to match what your race season is. I've seen people make the mistake where they're not in race shape to go do Daytona and Freestone, and then they're still in a preseason phase. That's why, remember we said earlier, you want to try to only peak 2 to 3 times per year. And that's simply because from a human performance standpoint, you want to build, peak, and then reset and do it over and over and over again. Like our top triathletes, it's usually Ironman is the big one, and we might do 1 to 2 other high profile. The rest is appearance money and prize money. But really, it's all about getting ready for Ironman in October. Now, obviously, with our sport, with like the vet racing, you could race Daytona, you can go straight to Freestone, go straight from Freestone, you go right into an area after your areas, and then you're doing AZ Open, Cow Classic, Road to Mammoth, you might be doing Baja Broad, depending on the year, Mini-O's. There's so many races. You as a vet rider are not getting a chance to say, okay, here's my 8-week preseason. Here's my 12-week pre-competitive phase. Here's my 8 to 10-week competitive phase. Here's my peak race number 1, number 2, and number 3. So, Andrew, when you go back to the idea, I don't think it's because the heart rate is so high. They're fit enough, and we've got, like we talked about, we've got the world record just got broken in the marathon. He went under 2 hours.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Now, think about this. His average pace for 26.2 was 4:33. His last mile was a 4:13 in that ballpark. Don't hold me to the exact number on that last one. He negative split the marathon. So, Andrew, to your point, there's no way that somebody could negative split if they went anaerobic the first 13 miles to be able to go faster the next 13. His 5K pace on average was under 14 minutes on average per 5K for the whole race. So when you're looking at, and yes, we could talk about performance enhancing drugs. Absolutely. They're juice to the gills. Okay. That's not what we need to talk about. I still think it's cool that a human body could go that fast with drugs or no drugs. That's just amazing. That's like, watching these top fuel dragster cars that are so strong you can't even dyno them, and they're doing a quarter of a mile at 300 miles an hour. It's mesmerizing to just watch it, in my opinion. But when you're looking at the idea of the accumulation of lactic acid, I want to go back to all three systems, because Andrew, you were mentioning this earlier. If you're out there on the track and you're dragging me around, I'm holding onto your jersey, that's the same thing like your hamstrings being inflexible, arguing and working against your quadriceps, i.e. dabbing your foot. Think about if you're dragging me around the track, how much is your heart rate going to go up? If you're dehydrated, if you're inflexible, you will have a higher heart rate, which means you will go anaerobic earlier. And it's not even a fitness issue. It is a dehydration issue. It's your
Yeah.
heart rate's going to go up earlier. You will go into anaerobic earlier because you're inelastic. So the quads are fighting against the hamstrings from a strength to flexibility ratio, or vice versa. Now all of a sudden you cross that anaerobic threshold. Now you're saying to yourself, gosh, I've got to get fitter. That's why we had so much. That's why we enjoyed putting the anatomy of arm pump together, because the amount of ahas we got where people are like, oh my goodness, I'm over here when I should be over here focusing. They never realized the role of flexibility, because if the muscles can't slide and glide, right? When we say flexibility, we're talking about the ability to slide and glide. That's based on the belly of the muscle. If they're sticking together because of dehydration, you're going to have a higher core body temperature. Higher core body temperature artificially elevates heart rate. Now you go anaerobic because of internal heat, not because of effort. You see where these dominoes just keep falling on each other?
Yeah.
James, during the J Day, did you have any issues with the heat and humidity?
No, no.
Okay.
Actually, it was nope. It was hot, especially coming from Virginia, but I was fine.
Andrew, how about yourself? Like at World Vets, is the heat a big issue for you?
Not really, because I mean it tends to be in November, so you're at you're in pretty much into fall. I mean, you can get some hot days,
Yeah.
but again, I think if you stick to that structure of the calories and the proper hydration, I think you're fine. And I think for some people might probably want to know what that really is to
Yeah.
help them out. But I don't tend to have a problem. I mean, there's been weeks where I've raced a bicycle on a Thursday night, raced Glen Helen Saturday, and then gone to Big Bear and raced a mountain bike on a Sunday. But by following all those protocols, I can maintain that, pretty well and recover quite well.
I remember
Totally.
when you did that, it was cool to see.
Yeah.
Andrew, you just mentioned something, and so for everybody who has stuck with us this long, you're going to see on the screen right here. Here's a QR code to our sweat rate calculator. If you're driving, please don't take your eyes off the road. We'll put a link to the QR code in the description box below as well. It's free on behalf of us at Complete Racing Solutions. Thank you for supporting the show. Please utilize that sweat rate calculator. You guys can do it on your phone. You just manually put it in. You'll put in your beginning weight, put in your ending weight, and remember to document how many ounces of fluid, whether it's water and or energy fuel. A lot of people miss this. If I take in 16 ounces of energy fuel, I've consumed a pound of fluid. So if you weigh in at 190, you weigh out at 185, and you took in 16 ounces, you did not lose 5 pounds, you lost 6. Now, the beautiful part is all you need is the 3 numbers. Plug it into the plug it into the formula. You guys will have it right there on your phone. Save it. Use it every time you work out, because the ideal sweat rate is between 1 and 2%. If you sweat less than 1, you overhydrated. You should always lose water when you exercise. If you lost more than 2%, you're already on the fast track to being dehydrated. And that has a very significant impact on both your speed and your endurance. So that's our way of saying thank you for supporting the show. Like I said, it'll be on the QR code here and it'll be in the description. We're going to be putting out more resources for you guys, so that way you've got them on your phone, and we hope you guys will utilize that.
I just got to add to that that is a big game changer. What I found earlier on, and I will say it is a little painful getting in out of your gear, weighing, recording, all that. But once you work that out and you work how your body works and that consumption of fluids and sweat, depending whether it is a motorcycle or bicycle or whatever it is, for me now, I know mental notes. It's like, hey, if I know it's a 20-minute moto, I'm gonna lose this much. I'm gonna need this many calories or this much fluid. So. And the same, I've kind of got it down to an art now. It's like, all right, I'm pretty confident in those ways, but it is a game changer for sure.
Exactly. No doubt.
James, how much did your sweat rate change when you were in the winter doing some of those winter sports versus like when you were at Loretta's? Did you find it much harder to keep?
No, my sweat rate is always pretty constant. It seems like as soon as it seems like as soon as I start sweating, I sweat pretty much the same regardless. It's just that once my body gets to this temperature, I guess it goes. I'm right at 27 ounces an hour, believe it or not, is what where I'm happy at. And just to add to Andrew's point, if you're not taking the calculator, you're just, and you're not utilizing it, you're just guessing. I remember the first hair scramble I did. This was years ago. I literally looked at my son and I said, I think we need to drive to the hospital because I do not know what is going on with the way I felt. And one, I didn't understand how to race a 2 hour race. I was straight out of moto, so I was trying to sprint it, but I didn't have nearly as much fluids, and that's what I was feeling. I was dehydrated. I didn't have any electrolytes in me, and I was like, I think I could never do this again. It was crazy. But now, just like Andrew said, now I could do everything. It's real simple. So yeah.
Well, I hope that everybody will take advantage of that. Andrew and James have been with me for quite a few years. We used to use everything in Excel spreadsheets. With the advent of apps and things that have become a little bit more user friendly, we now make it and have it available for you on your phone. So you don't even need a Google sheet anymore. You can literally just plug your numbers in, and I hope you guys will take advantage of it. I will say people tend to be surprised how much they do sweat. In fact, not to get too far in front of our conversation here, the next show that we do, we'll break down the nutrition and the sweating and the calories, because there's a little bit of science that goes into it, not from a calculation and understanding the concept. There's more of a science of how to accurately capture it and what do the percentage points actually mean. We'll break down, like when you're 3% dehydrated, how much power and endurance you lose. We'll talk about some strategies using some resources that will help you track what your burn rate is versus your intake, and make sure that you're using food to kind of prehydrate. It's not like we want you to be drinking, gallons and gallons of fluid that just sloshes around in your gut and you feel sick to your stomach anyway. So, well, guys, we've gone over an hour here. I can't thank you enough for joining us, James. It's great to have you. I know.
Thanks for having me.
Well, trying to get your schedule nailed down, it's and I say that very positively. You're always kind to say, yeah, if I'm in Zimbabwe when I land and I'm supposed to, I should be good, and we'll go from there. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining.
I appreciate it, Rob. Thank you. And it was great meeting you, Andrew.
You too, James. Likewise.
And for everybody, like I said, Hoppo is my new co-host. You'll be seeing him with every show going forward as we bring in guests like James. Hoppo, just want to say thanks for grabbing this bull by the horns and joining us. I love having your knowledge and your expertise, and I want to say thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
I want to say thank you for the opportunity, because it's a blessing in disguise. I love it. So thank you.
Good stuff. And for all of you guys, again, I want to thank HBI Auto for supporting the show. If you're a Porsche aficionado, Billy's going to be your new best friend. And we want to thank everybody who's liked and subscribed. I know that sounds a little hokey. Everybody says it in their video, but the numbers have been phenomenal. We do appreciate the support. We appreciate the kind comments. Please share this with everybody and anybody who's a vet racer. We want to make a difference one rider at a time. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next month.